for the invitation. Before I share my understanding of militarization of politics in Iran, I'd like to take issue with the assumption that the 1979 revolution in Iran was an Islamic revolution. That is a myth that the Iranian regime has been promoting. The reality is that the 1979 revolution against Shah was a massively popular revolution that brought in all sections of society with a lot of different ideological and even religious backgrounds. It was only after 1980, when the war with Iraq started, that the clerical aspects of the regime in Iran managed to, in a way, corner power, secure power by eliminating opposing and rival voices within the Iranian politics. So the leftists, communists, liberals, feminists were practically eliminated physically in order for the current regime to take hold of power and really perpetuate the myth of Islamic revolution and Islamic republic. So that's just a little point of difference I'd like to share. But going to the topic of militarization, I think it follows from what I've been saying is that the ruling regime in Iran presents its own interests as national interests. So it projects its own insecurities and projects its own anxieties onto the state. And any threat to the ruling regime are typically presented as a matter of national security, threats to national security. Of course, history of antagonism between Iran and the United States, and most significantly since 2001 war on terror, has really put the Iranian ruling regime on the back foot. When the United States stationed troops on either side of Iran, in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and with President Bush really talking about regime change, it really heightened fears in Tehran that the US was going to move against the regime. And many of you would recall that that concern with impending US action led to a decidedly militant posture in Iran and brought into office Mahmoud Ahmadinejad as the president, who was a firebrand and was supported by the Revolutionary Guards in 2005. And since then, you might argue that the Revolutionary Guards have retained their significance in politics, have retained a lot of power within the establishment, but the deciding factor, and I think the most significant aspect of Revolutionary Guards' role in Iranian politics is what role they play in Iran's foreign relations. And that is really, it really highlights the role of Revolutionary Guards. The war in Syria is proof for the Iranian leadership that the United States has not given up on this idea of regime change, that the United States is still very much committed to toppling regimes that challenge US hegemony in the region. So the fight in Syria and Iran's support for Bashar al-Assad is really presented as a matter of national defense. When the United States supported proxy forces, proxy actors against Assad regime, and in fact, the rise of Daesh is also ascribed as a US plan to remove Assad and then move towards Iran. And the anti-Shia, very much pronounced anti-Shia message of Daesh is always seen by the leadership in Iran as evidence that the United States has not given up on its idea of regime change and is really committed to toppling the regime in Tehran. So this has led to the doctrine of forward defense. And I've just shared a recent publication in the chat. I'm not sure if everyone sees that. where the Iranian regime considers the use of its proxy forces in the region as a matter of preventing or stalling or deterring action against Iran proper. So there have been many direct quotes from Iranian officials where they say fighting in Syria is more important than fighting in Khuzestan within Iran, because if we can defeat them there, they will never actually get to Iranian territory. So it's all seen. So the Iran's promotion of sponsorship of proxy actors like Hezbollah, like Fatimiyun, who are Afghan fighters, like Zainabiyun, who are Pakistani Shia fighters. The recruitment of these foreign fighters and their use in the Syrian theater of conflict is seen as a matter of preventing conflict within Iranian territory. So a matter of forward defense. So the problem with the doctrine of forward defense is that it really gives free rein to the Revolutionary Guards. Revolutionary Guards, as we have heard, are only answerable to the supreme leader. The Revolutionary Guards are not answerable to the government of Iran. And that actually creates a lot of tension, and also highlights the peculiarities of the Iranian political system, where the armed forces are not accountable and answerable to elected representatives, to the elected government. So I guess this is something we can come back to during the question and answer, the Q&A. The peculiarity of the situation and the irony of the situation is not lost to Iranian commentators. It's not lost to Iranian politicians. Many of you will recall that former Foreign Minister Mahmoud Javad Zarif gave an interview, supposed to be a secret tape interview, but it was widely circulated, where he talked about how Iranian foreign ministry had its hands tied behind its back when it came to issues of war in Syria and elsewhere, because if they were considered as security threats, national security threats, then the Revolutionary Guards had free rein. They could do whatever they want without the foreign ministry being involved. So what he said was an open secret, but it was unusual for an Iranian official to actually say it publicly, so significant in that sense. Another example of how the Revolutionary Guards has autonomy and independence of action from representative elected government was when General Qasem Soleimani visited Moscow to meet President Putin in 2015. And that was just on the eve of the Russian commitment to war in Syria. And it's quite unusual, and it's definitely not protocol to have a general meet a head of state, a foreign general meet the head of state. But Soleimani was not just a general. Soleimani was representing the head of state in Iran. So that hence the connection and hence the meeting that he managed to secure, again, highlighting the independence of the Revolutionary Guards. So what's happening in the region is that the region is quite hostile towards Iran. Iranian leaders are anxious about their prospects, and the knee-jerk response of the leadership is to invest in asymmetrical mechanism of warfare. Ballistic missiles is an issue that Iran has been investing in that technology. Cyber warfare is another area Iran has been investing in. And of course, proxy actors is the most documented and the most discussed. And it's a topic that I have also explored in my research. So this notion that that Iran is under threat, that Iran needs to be self-reliant, that Iran needs to stand on its own feet, and it's often called resistance economy or axis of resistance. There are variations of the term, is really driving the strategic thinking in Iran And it's really providing the opportunity and the freedom and autonomy to the Revolutionary Guards to operate and in a way dictate Iran's foreign relations in the region. The problem with this is that Iran's behavior, even though it is argued to be defensive, is not seen as defensive. It's seen as quite aggressive in the region. And it has led to an arms race. It has led to a security dilemma where countries in the region, like Saudi Arabia, like UAE, feel threatened and really anxious about Iranian agenda. So they invest in high-tech weaponry, major purchase of weaponry from the United States, and creates an arms race, which then again feeds into Iranian sense of vulnerability and the need for vigilance and the need for a constant state of readiness for conflict, for war. The domestic implications of this constant fear of being attacked, existential threat, the domestic implications are, of course, immense. The political system in Iran is closed. It's a very closed system with the supreme leader as the head of state, appointing his loyal allies to position of authority and weeding out potential threats. Some of you will remember that two presidential candidates in 2009, Mehdi Karoubi and Mir Hossein Mousavi, who challenged Ahmadinejad, are still under house arrest in Iran. Former President Khatami is practically banned from speaking in public and his image being shown in public. So the state, the ruling regime, which has control of the state, is very concerned about alternative views, competing views within the state, because it is constantly referring to an outside threat, an existential threat emanating from the United States and its regional allies. I wouldn't call Iranian politics as militarized politics. I think Iranian politics has a lot in common with other repressive regimes. If you look at China, if you look at Saudi Arabia, they have extensive use of the security agencies to silence opposition. So it's very much in that category of being an authoritarian repressive regime. But I think the Revolutionary Guards have made a very significant impact on militarizing Iranian foreign relations and regional relations. Thank you.